So I'm going to start off the semester by talking about some very basic terms that are going to be helpful for us as we go about getting started, taking comedy seriously, as it were. So, some basic terms for us to help us think about what it is that makes us laugh and why. On the one hand, we have the comic. And comic, in this sense, is an adjective. It describes an event, a character, or something that happens. All right. So comic, not in the sense of a stand-up comic, but the comic event, something that we see, like someone falling, say, on a banana peel. That's a comic event, or a clown might be a comic character. That's different from the joke. And a joke is a constructed comic event. It's something that's created in order, perhaps, to elicit that kind of comic effect where we laugh. So we're starting to get into that distinction between comic things that just happen and jokes that are made and constructed. Okay, so we've got comic, we've got joke, then we also have comedy, which is supposedly what we're studying, right? Screen comedy. So a comedy refers to a broader structure, usually some kind of narrative, which is then characterized by numerous comic events. So, for example, a situation comedy television show, right, has an organizing structure of a plot and characters and things that happen, and within that, there's any number of different comic events, which may or may not, be like an actual joke. Or, of course, a feature film is another example of a kind of comedy, sketch comedy. So when we use comedy in here, it's okay. Sometimes, I don't want us to get too freaked out about the kinds of words that we're using to describe things. But this is pretty useful to think about. This is really a key difference between different kinds of films or TV shows. All kinds of dramatic programs have isolated jokes or funny moments, right? That doesn't make them a comedy. Because a comedy is about this overall characterization of comic events being primary, right? So all of these different things, the comic events, a joke, a comedy, all these different things, what do they have in common? They produce laughter. They produce that crazy, involuntary effect. And the thing is that laughter comes for different reasons. And I'm going to here briefly lay out 3 different theories of laughter. These are not the only theories of laughter, but they're useful for getting us started. And I want you to think about these in the first few examples of comedy that we're going to be looking at here in the class. And we'll add many other approaches, but these are 3 very general and important theories of laughter. Now, the first one is superiority. And I would say that probably, despite the fact that it's superiority is the title of it, this is in a lot of ways the lowest form of laughter, because the laughter of superiority is essentially laughing at people. And the laughter of superiority focuses on defects or things that go wrong with people or inequality. It really sets up an us-them dichotomy. We laugh at them. They are different from us, right? So again, even this can be complicated, right? Superiority might simply be laughing at someone that falls, tripping on a banana peel. But this is the kind of laughter that stereotypes are all about, right? Racist humor, sexist humor, this is the laughter of superiority, laughing at people for being different or having something wrong with them. Okay. Not in some ways, right, the laughter of superiority, that's not to say that it's always politicized. Someone falling on a banana peel is not necessarily politicized, but it's a good way for us to start seeing the kind of correlations there are between these different kinds of comedy and what it is that we're laughing at. Okay, another, incongruity. This, in a lot of ways, I think, this might be the most basic and even most common kind of laughter, the laughter of incongruity, when things just don't fit together. When we're bringing into connection things that just seem that they're incongruous. Distant ideas or very different people. There's a violation of boundaries of keeping things separate, right? So the laughter of incongruity is when we laugh at something it doesn't belong there in some way or another. So this is a very general idea, and all of these really are only going to become useful to us when we try to apply them to a particular example. Okay, a third theory of laughter, right? Again, these are about where does laughter come from? What is it that elicits laughter? The laughter of relief. So this is the idea that laughter essentially is a way that we release nervous energy. And the mechanisms for that may or may not be because something is appealing to our unconscious thoughts. Laughter, after all, is involuntary. Then what is it that causes it? Right? And this is one of the things about laughter that is nervous. We don't really have control over it, right? So it can feel good to know what it is that makes us laugh, but I'm sure you've all had these experiences where you ended up laughing at something just because you were so nervous and you didn't know what else to do. And of course, humor also diffuses conflict. And this is really apparent, particularly when we watch stand-up comedy, I think. And stand-up comedians, the good stand-up comedians aren't the ones that just tell a bunch of jokes that are making fun of people. They're the ones, or that laughter of superiority. The best comedians are the ones that know how to walk the line and toy with the kind of nervous energy of the crowd, saying things that make the crowd nervous or bring some kind of relief because they say things that other people can't say or are afraid to say. That's very different from just being politically incorrect and saying things that you're not supposed to say about people, right? Laughter can be very complicated, and we can all agree on that, I think. So here we got 3 different theories that sometimes, anyway, can help us explain laughter. And again, like I said, I'd like for you to kind of try to apply these to the things that we're looking at, whether where you're at home looking at them or if we actually look at them in class. Now, the thing about these all is that they all are dependent upon a kind of relationship between the teller, the person that's telling the joke or creating the comedy, and the audience, and that audience's sense of how things are supposed to be, right? That us-them relationship, a shared sense of inside and out for that laughter of superiority, or what fits and what doesn't fit for incongruity, or what is it we're not allowed to say, or what is it we're afraid to say for that comedy of relief. So essentially what we're talking about here is social and cultural context. In other words, when we look at comedy and we look at who finds that comedy funny, where it's popular, that tells us a lot about those people, where they come from, what's going on there, what it is that causes relief, or is it kind of laughter of superiority, right? So even though comedy may seem like such an individual thing, right? It's an involuntary response much of the time that we as individuals have, and what I find is funny might be very different from what you find is funny, right? Still, there are these shared senses about what is or isn't funny in a culture, at any place, at any time, that tells us much more than the individual. Okay, now I'm bringing this slideshow to a close here, just talking a little bit about, all right, well, where do we take those theories there, and then how do we approach that in studying comedy? So our method here in this class is that we're looking at comedy in terms of its structure and its content, right? If comedy is the arrangement of various jokes or comic events, how are they arranged? What is the structure that brings those together in terms of characters and plot and style even, right? And then there's the content. There's what's said and what happens. So we're looking at the structure for these various different events or characters, and then the content itself. We can look for structural patterns, whether it's within a particular example or it's amongst multiple examples. And then we can also look outside of that example. What is it that anchors that particular case of comedy to the moment in which it was produced or the moment in which people watched it? All that stuff together helps us think about what is it that makes it funny, or made it funny at one time if it may not seem so funny to us again. Okay. So again, we've got a variety of different theories here to help us get started. In all cases, we're going to apply these and just try to think about where is the laughter effect supposedly coming from.